Hello guys, welcome to Redditor's Revenge. Here we post amazing revenge stories daily. And if you want more content like this, please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned with us. Moving on to today's first story. I used to work at a consulting company in Asia owned by a baby boomer European guy. Let's call the company COG and the owner is Duck. To give a brief background, Duck spent his entire career working in the hospitality industry for various hotel brands all over the world. At one point, he specialized in one niche area in the industry and set up a consulting firm to provide consultancy to his business connections. The company employees were majority expats. I spent my entire career working in the financial industry and am quite a specialist in the field of capital market fundraising. Duck approached me with a great plan to list one of his properties in North America in a stock market. At that time, it seemed to be a good project. He also offered me a management position in the company he set up to deal with the listing process, and a good salary in comparison to the job I had at the time. The agreement stated that if any party would like to terminate this agreement, they need to inform the other party 3 months in advance. Failing to do will cost the party who initiated the termination a penalty fee equal to 3 months' salary. Unfortunately, I joined the company at the worst possible time, the year end of 2019. Initially, things were alright. Dick spent only 1 to 2 days a week at the office and spent the rest of the week abroad to acquire new businesses. However, as everyone knows, a few months after that, the COVID pandemic hit the hospitality sectors globally. Duck lost all his business deals in the pipeline. His property in North America was also shut down. The only income stream for the company was payments from the existing contracts. Duck got stuck in the office for 7 days a week with not much money in the bank account. This is when he showed his true characteristics. Despite the government's highly encouraged work-from-home policy, Dick was dissatisfied with the idea. As a boomer, he wanted to see his employees working all the time. He called anyone who chose to work from home as lazy and cowardly. In addition, he would randomly call them several times a day on non-important issues, just to ensure everyone was at the desk all the time. Furthermore, he would assign lots of non-necessary tasks. Remember, all business deals were cancelled to these people to do, so they would need to stay very late to finish the work. He cut off 20 to 30% salary for all employees, including himself. This seemed acceptable at that time given the economic conditions. However, this will come up later. He would be pissed off at anyone in the company who mentioned any news about the pandemic. He just wanted to pretend that nothing severed happened and that things would be back to normal soon. Due to the pandemic and the financial status of the company, my role significantly shifted from getting a company listed to selling our assets to whoever gives the right price. Thus, the company can survive. During these months, I had to work closely with the company CFO called Fatty. Fatty had a very impressive resume with a degree from an Ivy League university. However, for some reason, there was nothing inside that brain. He could talk about all the financial jargon all day long, but he could not understand even the basic concepts of those words. Fatty would make mistakes all the time and trouble other colleagues. For some odd reason, Fatty would receive only minor criticism from Duck. Conversely, if other employees made a tenth of the mistakes that Fatty did, they would receive harsh criticism. We were approached by various buyers. One of them was one of the largest real estate developers in this country, let's call Mackie. We had a few meetings with senior executives from Mackie to present our North American properties. They seemed to be interested to invest $100 million in acquiring the property, but then they just disappeared. Later on, we were approached by a private equity firm, let's call Dummy. Rather than acquiring the property, Dummy made an offer for shares of COG. As a result, a series of due diligence occurred. I had to lead the deal from my side. During the process of document preparation, I found various histories about Duck and COG. Duck always claimed to his potential clients that his company had been involved in various projects worth billions of dollars in the past. It was partially true. However, his participation was very limited to less than 1% of those projects. There were a few projects in that COG played a vital role. However, those projects were relatively small. To make matter worse, 100% of them failed before completion. There were various companies that Duck claimed to have co-founded or was a part of the key management. However, there were no official records of it. By digging into financial statements, I found out that he paid back all the money he saved from cutting employees' salaries into his personal account as a form of bonus. I felt horrible for working for such a phony, However, at that time, it was in Q4 divided by 2020. It was way too difficult to get a new job in the middle of the pandemic. The last straw came when we were about to submit the financial model to Dummy to set the valuation. I developed a financial model which would calculate all the potential deals into the valuation. All I need was the input of pipeline data from Fatty, and after I plugged in the data, Duck asked Fatty to help review it. Fatty complained to everyone that the model was wrong and there were so many mistakes. When I checked, all those mistakes that he mentioned came from those inputs he provided to me. Garbage in, garbage out. I informed Duck that it was not my mistake but Fatty's. However, Duck criticized me for not being responsible for my own mistakes and said that even though it was Fatty's mistake, I was still responsible to verify them. How the FCK could I verify the correctness of the raw data? I wanted to quit so badly at this point. Remember the 3-month notice period, this is where it became relevant. Throughout 2020, various employees quit. However, the term became a pain in the ass. It would be highly difficult for anyone to find potential employers who would be willing to wait for 3 months till the notice period is served. Thus, employees had to either pay the penalty fees or put in their resignation in advance before start looking for a job. For the locals, we could take the risk of staying at home with no job. However, the expats needed to choose either to take a risk in leaving the country or to pay the fees. Most chose to do the latter. The worst thing I experienced about this contract clause was when one of my colleagues, who was one of the first employees of this company, decided to quit because her grandmother was about to die in a few weeks. Therefore, she wanted to go back home as soon as possible to spend the remaining time with her grandmother. Yet, Duck insisted that she needed to pay the penalty fee. In every meeting, Duck would try his best to scare the SHT out of everyone. But talking about those companies that went bankrupt and trying to remind us to be grateful for having jobs. I hold my grudge and waited patiently till Feb 2021. The pandemic became better and employers start hiring again. I got 3 offers within the second week of the month. Based on the situation, I knew that I would eventually get a job either in these 3 companies or somewhere else. Thus, I submitted my resignation, which would be effective in May. Duck was furious. He knew he could not lose me at this stage since I was the only one who could execute with Dummy, but he was too arrogant to admit it. Instead, he gave me the worst counteroffer discussion anyone could have. He said that I was a coward for jumping away from the crisis, and I would be a failure all my life if I choose to walk away now. He tried to talk about all the deals that would be coming, and I would miss out on working on those projects. He said that I should ignore the higher salary that other companies might offer. The pandemic was harsh for everyone. I should stay to see the company's greatness. In the meantime, I could ask for money from my parents or my wife's parents. Needless to say, the conversation did not change my mind even a bit. When all those efforts failed, he brought up the 3-month notice period. He said that no company would be willing to wait 3 months and that I needed to pay a penalty fee to him if I quit. Unfortunately, this was when his own policy backfired. I intentionally did all the stupid mistakes that Fatty did. When he complained, I simply responded. It was his responsibility to verify the information that I submitted. I did my job very slowly. Thus, he basically had to pay me 3 months' salary for the work I normally completed in 1 week. Whenever he complained, I told him that he could fire me anytime. In that case, he needed to pay me a 3-month salary as a penalty fee. For a person who always takes advantage of his employees, he probably wanted to scream at me. However, that was not the best part yet. By the end of April, HR from Mackie approached me. She said that she got my contact from a business card I gave to the senior executives several months ago. It turned out that the executives were very impressed with my skills. They wanted to hire a new vice president and viewed me as a high potential candidate. I took the offer and started working 2 weeks later. A few months later, Dick tried to use all his connections to reach Mackie's chairman to propose his North American property once again. The chairman assigned my team to review the property one more time. Last time, they were interested, but they did not want to make an acquisition in the middle of the pandemic. This time, they felt the timing might be right and would like to explore more detail. My boss assigned me to look after the project. Since I knew everything about the property, he let me decide whether we should move forward with the deal. To be honest, the property was fine and Duck has improved the property's performance very well since his acquisition. However, a year ago when we first approached Mackie, Duck explained to me how he would screw every penny out of Mackie's pockets. To avoid criticizing Duck directly, I don't want to look like a guy who badmouthed his ex-employer. I pointed out all loopholes within the business model and explained that we could be taken advantage of from these loopholes if we proceed. Being a smart man, my new boss could sense something fishy about Duck, so he asked me to speak more about my experience. I told him about some of Duck's unethical behaviors mentioned above. Mackey's management not only decided not to invest in COG's properties, but they also blacklist COG and Duck from being potential vendors. Now, here is the end of our first story, and I hope you guys are enjoying my content. So before moving to the next story, you guys can share your thought in the comments section about this story, and let me know if you want to listen such more stories or not. Also hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay tuned with us for more satisfying revenge stories.
Now, moving on to our final story. One summer I was working as a server at a well-known pizza restaurant. It was in a small tourist town, so it was amazing money, and as a university student, that was all that mattered to me. This job was so horrible that I would go home wanting to quit, count my tips, and decide I could put up with it for one more day. The reason it was so horrible was because of the manager, Tracy. Tracy was hot-headed, irrational, a liar, a manipulator, and overall a terrible human being. I watched her terrorize the other servers, and kind of kept my head down to avoid it. Examples of her being awful: she once screamed at me because the entire restaurant didn't have cutlery on the tables, because the restaurant physically didn't have enough and she was too cheap to order more. I was in the middle of filling drinks for a table when she made me stop and go into the kitchen to run the dishwasher. She then yelled at me because that table didn't have full drinks. This all happened in front of a guest who ended up saying something to Tracy about her behavior. After Tracy left, the guest assured me that she was going to be reporting her once another server was running her food. Tracy physically grabbed the server by the arm and pulled her back into the kitchen because that server didn't run the ticket before hers. They got into a screaming match and the cops were called. The server sent me photos of her bruised arm the next day. Tracy played the cops like a fiddle and was like that never happened, and batted her eyelashes. I'm not sure how she got away with that. My sister was the hostess and was only making $12 a week in tip out. The other servers and I did the math, and my sister should have been taking home $40 a night. Ironically, Tracy had a new boat and a new truck my sister messed up. I don't remember how, and Tracy took me into the back of the restaurant to scream at me. We were out there for a full 15 minutes before the supervisor told her they needed me back. This supervisor was an angel, and she comes back into the story a bit. This was a while ago, and I'm sure I'll think of more, but for now, I will continue with the story. Tracy's reputation in the town was awful. The locals would not eat there because of her. In a small community, everyone had a story about her. I would get sympathy when people found out where I worked. So that tells you just how bad it was. Supervisors told the franchisees about how bad the working conditions were, but every time they would investigate, she would turn into a completely different person. She was kind and helpful, and working for that side of her wasn't so bad. But when they weren't there, the working conditions were awful again. It seemed like they would never catch her in her natural element. The revenge part of my story began on my last day of work. We had a health inspection and failed, so I knew Tracy would be particularly awful that day. I looked at the angel of a supervisor and told her that if Tracy screamed at me, then I was walking out. The supervisor said she wouldn't blame me and didn't know why I had put up with it for so long. So anyways, Tracy gets in, and of course, she starts yelling at me until I start crying. I finished my last table and walked out, taking my sister with me. Down 2 staff members, the restaurant was in trouble. We drove by it 30 minutes later, and there was a lineup out the door because there were no hostess seating people. Tracy had to seat people and serve my section. When I got home, I messaged all the staff that had quit over the summer. I told them that I was whistleblowing and that they should too. The girl that was physically assaulted ended up writing a letter and sending photos of her bruised arm. My letter ended up being 2 pages long, single-spaced, and included everything I've mentioned, with emphasis on her having 2 different personalities when the franchisors were there. A few months later, my sister got a message from the dishwasher saying that Tracy got fired and the angel supervisor took her position. Because of that, I decided to go back the following summer. I was hired immediately. While working there, I discovered the results of my actions. The restaurant was rated the lowest in the country under Tracy's management. This, coupled with the whistleblowers and the civilian complaints, resulted in a serious investigation. I don't remember how high up in the company he was, but a higher-up ended up going to the restaurant under the intent that he was a new supervisor coming to help because she was short-staffed. He observed her behavior for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, he told her, "Here's the step-by-step plan of how we're going to fix the restaurant. Her response was, "Who the FK do you think you are?" I guess when he told her, the expression on her face was priceless. I wish I saw it. Anyways, she obviously got fired and is now working at a fast food pizza place in the same town. The place is always empty because the locals still actively boycott her. I know it was long, but thanks for sticking with me. Now, here is the end of our today's video, and I hope you enjoyed these revenge stories. Guys, I want to hear your thought about this petty revenge story in the comments section, and let me know if you were in OP's situation, what would you do? And before you leave, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to remain updated on more fantastic stories.